Oh my God, this is not going to work.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Books Received, the nerdiest show on the internet. Not only are we talking about books, but we're doing it on a Saturday morning, which of course reveals how exciting our lives are. We are joined by our colleague and co-hosts. First, Nadia Sbeiti from AUB, and then over Skype, we are joined by Abdullah Al-Aryan from Georgetown University, Qatar, and Ziad Abu Rish from Ohio University. And we are also here at the studio with Khaled Names, Tariq Radi, Haley Stump, because I was thinking Stump, okay, and Noah Black. We are excited to be here, and we're just gonna get right into it. We will start with a book on Arab Revolution in the 21st Century by Nader Farghani, and this book is released or published in 2016 by Palgrave Macmillan, and it features two parts. The first part says alt, state, and prospects. I have no idea what alt means, but it says here state of the Arab liberation tide. Okay, so that's part one. Starts with this state of alt. Why did the Arab popular uprisings erupt? To falter or not to falter? Lessons from Tunisia and Egypt. Lots of books focus on Tunisia and Egypt. Injustice persists, and so on. Part two includes mainly one section, essential features of a human renaissance path, and then of course a conclusion. So I will, give this to Nadia because I can't read the back part.
So basically, Nader Farghani presents a compassionate analysis of the Arab popular uprisings in the 21st century, with particular reference to the cases of Egypt and Tunisia. Under authoritarian rule, relentless injustice creates the objective conditions for expressions of popular protest, which may culminate in popular uprisings, as witnessed in many Arab countries at the end of the first decade of the 21st century. Unsurprisingly, the slogans of the Arab Liberation Tide, ALT, the slogans of the ALT, popular revolts centered around freedom, implying sound democratic governance, social justice, and human dignity for all. In reality, the short-lived governance arrangements which followed the January 2011 popular revolt in Egypt, for example, were little more than extensions of the authoritarian governance system the revolt set out to overthrow. There were differences, of course, between the three short-lived regimes that took power since then, but in form rather than substance. This book uses a structuralist political economy framework rather than a detailed historical account, as it considers how the Arab liberation tide may prove to be an historic opportunity for human renaissance in the Arab world, or alternatively a disaster of epic proportions. Nader Farghani is director of the El Mishkat Center for Research in Cairo, and founding lead author of the Arab Human Development Reports from 2002 to 2005. He obtained his Bachelor of Science from Cairo University and his PhD from the University of North Carolina, USA.
And who praised it?
So the book is praised by June Ray, who is MENA human rights consultant and former chief of the civil society section in the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, as well as Gerald Butt, former BBC Middle East correspondent and a writer and analyst on the region.
Gerald must have had a really tough time in high school or middle school.
Yeah, he's probably still having a hard time.
Guys, any comments?
I think Farghani's book actually is very interesting because it's one of these attempts in the aftermath of the Arab uprisings to try and reintroduce class analysis. So it's interesting to think about him in a juxtaposition to Joel Bainen's book, which I think we'll be talking about later, because Farghani makes the argument that there is no real class structure in the Middle East, and that's part of his analysis for why things went wrong and what needs to happen. Whereas Bainan, we'll see, has a very different take. I think for people thinking about what this book has to offer, it's a good way to think about the different ways people are deploying class analysis once again. Whether successfully or not is a different question.
Yeah, I don't have anything that substantive to add, but I do want to.
So the good thing about this is that we're going to simply go on and...
Can I finish the point I was making, or no? Should I start over?
No, khalas, we don't need anything from you. No, I'm joking, of course. No, of course. But we did get the point about you not having something as substantive as Ziad, who's now slouching back.
Yeah, I don't have anything. I don't have anything substantive to add, but I do want to give a shout out to the PR folks over at Palgrave, who in posting the information about this title on the book's Amazon page somehow decided to post one of the external reviewers' reviews of the manuscript, including all of the suggested revisions, and it just sort of concludes by saying, I recommend a revision of the narrative section of the manuscript, provided much more detail of names and dates and references to the theoretical framework. I just thought that was interesting that they somehow managed to include the external reviewers' comments in the actual Amazon page. Something they might want to look out for.
That's a great suggestion and a good signal to all publishers. Seriously.
Who says commercial presses are supposed to be better?
No, I don't know. Nobody I've heard. What I find interesting actually about the blurb for the book, the summary on the back, is that it actually doesn't ever mention Tunisia. Even though the book is supposedly about Egypt and Tunisia, and I'm not saying, and again, I haven't read it either, but I'm not saying that he doesn't talk about Tunisia, but the fact that it's not even mentioned as a representative example, even though Egypt is a little odd. So I'll be curious to know how he addresses and how he compares the two countries in the actual text.
Well, we will leave this to the reviewers, because we're actually saying more about the books than we planned, but that's totally fine.
We'll edit it.
That's totally fine, and it might actually be that we will only feature a few books. That's totally fine. So, shall we do the comparable book?
Yeah, should we go off of Ziad's comment and take up Joel Bainan's book next?